Are you ready to acquire some wisdom? Well, you're not going to get any from me, but we might get some from the book of Proverbs. So let's talk about Proverbs chapter 6 today. Our free PDF outline is available on our website as always, so you might want to go download it before we start our study. You can pause the video here and go get it. There's a link down in the description. The first part of our outline is our breakdown of the book of Proverbs. We've chosen to break it down into three different sections. The first one is chapters 1 through 9, and that is the way of wisdom versus the way of folly. I'm going to talk about that today, being in chapter 6. We are going to eventually get to the Proverbs of Solomon, which are really interesting, chapters 10 through 29, and then the last two chapters, the Proverbs of Augur and Lemuel. Just one key theme today, and it's pretty simple: practical warnings against unwise behavior. Our definitions, we have three. The first one is fowler. If you were with us for our Psalm study, we saw this one somewhere in the book of Psalms. I can't remember what chapter it was now, but a fowler is just a bird hunter. You'll see that in verse 5, someone who tries to catch birds in snares. Then we have the word haughty in verse 17. To be haughty is to be arrogant, to be prideful, considering yourself to be superior to other people and disdaining them, looking down your nose at them. And then we have discord in verse 19. This is not Discord like the website, like I have a Discord server. This is something else. Discord is disagreement between people. And as we scroll down to our little man here, he's contemplating a statement from the text. Can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned? What do you think he's thinking about? Hopefully you've already read the chapter and you already know, but we'll talk about it in our outline section. We've got a lot of sections today. We've got 5 sections. So let's talk about the first one, verses 1 through 5, the foolishness of taking on other people's debts. So in Proverbs 6, Solomon's going to give several practical warnings of what not to do if you want to be a wise person. Those who want to be wise aren't going to participate in these things. First, he advises his hearers not to guarantee debt for another person. It's foolish to promise to pay back somebody else's debts because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You don't know what's going to happen to that person and their financial situation, and you don't know what's going to happen to yourself. He advises anyone who's already made themselves a guarantor for a debt to do whatever is necessary to terminate their commitment and to get out of that situation. Section number 2 is verses 6 through 11, the foolishness of laziness. So Solomon encourages men who want to be wise to look at the ant. Yes, the ant, like the tiny bug that crawls on the ground, highlighting the consistent work ethic of the ant. They work steadily and responsibly in preparing their food for winter and preparing for the long term, the changing of the seasons. In contrast, the lazy man is slow to get to work. He piddles, he delays, he sleeps in longer than he should, and Solomon says that his sloth will eventually lead him into ruin and into poverty. Section number 3, another warning, verses 12 through 15, calamity awaits the crooked man. Solomon had wisdom to identify the wicked men who were in the streets of his kingdom. They gave themselves away by their behavior. Solomon mentions their winks, their crooked speech, the patterns of their feet, their hands, and the way that they move. Their perverted hearts were always intent on evil. They were always stirring up trouble. Solomon says that their fate is going to be calamity, and that in a moment they will be broken beyond healing. So good things do not await crooked men. Section number 4 is a bit famous. You hear it quoted somewhat often. 7 things that the Lord hates, verses 16 through 19. Solomon writes, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. And the 7 that he mentions here, haughty eyes, that's that word from our definition, eyes that look down on others. A lying tongue is number 2. Number 3, hands that shed innocent blood. Number 4, a heart that devises wicked plans. 5, feet that make haste to run to evil. That's those crooked men. Number 6, a false witness who breathes out lies or gives false testimony. Number 7, a person who sows discord or disagreement amongst brothers. And then finally, section number 5, verses 20 through 35, the foolishness of adultery. So just as Solomon did in the last chapter, he warns his son about adultery and getting involved with forbidden women. A temptress can be very attractive. Solomon admits this, and she speaks with a smooth tongue. But Solomon warns his son not to be captured by her beauty. The end result of doing so will be very painful for everyone involved. He asks, quote, "Can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Or can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched?" And the obvious answer to that question is no. He goes on, quote, "So he who goes into his neighbor's wife, none who touches her will go unpunished." This is kind of like the phrase that we have today, like, don't play with fire. Why? Because you're going to get burned. And Solomon's saying here is like, don't play with adultery, don't play with a forbidden woman. You're going to get burned. Not just burned in a relationship, but also punished by God, because God does not look kindly on this kind of behavior. A man who commits adultery lacks sense, and he destroys himself. He despises his reputation and his future. So basically, that's not the kind of man that Solomon is trying to train us up to be. He wants us to be wise men, which means avoiding all of these things. So those are Solomon's practical warnings in chapter 6, and that brings our summary of the text to a close, but we have to cover our application before we finish up totally for today. And the application is this: wisdom rarely thinks in the short term. A man who takes on another's debt isn't thinking about the long term, isn't considering the future. A man who is lazy is only thinking about the ease of the moment. A wicked man is only thinking about the short-term gain that he can get from his crooked dealings, not the long-term consequences. A man who commits adultery is only thinking about short-term pleasure. If you want to be wise, you need to be a long-term thinker. This is particularly true when it comes to our time on earth versus our time after death in eternity. A wise man will not prioritize the pleasures of the earth at the expense of long-term blessings in heaven. So that's our study in Proverbs 6. Hopefully you can take some of this wisdom and work it into your life as you're going about your day today and in the upcoming week. Thanks for joining me. Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about Proverbs 7.